Put your hands up.
No.
What?
I said no.
Why not?
I don't want to.
But I've got a gun.
I don't care.
Doesn't make any sense.
Too bad.
I think if there is any scene to indicate Martin McDonagh's approach to narrative and filmmaking, it is this scene from Seven Psychopaths. In most standoffs where one character is holding a gun to another, the power is initially in the one holding the gun. Through dialogue and manipulation, the power switches between the characters. Knowing audiences have seen this type of scene thousands of times, McDonagh decided to revamp it and make it funny with witty dialogue in a typical style of his. However, this scene does convey a lot of meaning about the characters and, more importantly, McDonagh's approach to filmmaking. McDonagh explicitly does not follow any rules, and he doesn't care about conventions of genre or narrative, expressed through Hans, played by Christopher Walken. This kind of process also works throughout one of McDonagh's other films, 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, which will be touched on later. There is a clear fascination with abjectation, a concept developed by Julia Kristeva, which looks at society's limits and how they are broken down. A film called Seven Psychopaths should, in theory, investigate humanity's dark aspects. The plot follows Marty, a man who is writing a screenplay called Seven Psychopaths. His best friend Billy runs a scheme where he steals dogs and gives them back to their owners for money. Things get interesting when he steals a dog of an emotionally compromised gangster.
Don't say Bonnie and Dead in the same thing, Paulo, please. I'm finding it hard enough to cope.
The narrative is very complicated and it takes a lot of hilarious twists and turns. It's comparable to a modern-day Pulp Fiction in its structure. The film has this reflective self-awareness to it that is charming and comedic. The protagonist Marty is clearly representative of McDonagh himself and his struggles to write. There's references to rules like you can't kill animals, climactic spectacles in third acts, or how women characters written by men have terrible dialogue. The film is ultimately about the depiction of violence within film and how many movies are resulting to cheap tropes that are overplayed and unoriginal. The film does, however, contain some of these discussed tropes, like the alcoholic writer and the shootout, but embraces the fun and joyful components of the spectacle. This is perfectly shown in Billy pitching the shootout scene using his mouth for sound effects, similar to an excited film fanatic talking about a scene just like it. Seven Psychopaths is also about bad writing. Marty often relies on these tropes as he struggles to write something meaningful. More specifically, the film is a postmodern take on what is called the Tarantino effect, where filmmakers in the late 90s and early 2000s were trying to replicate the unorthodox nature of Quentin Tarantino narratives after he released Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. Seven Psychopaths does not end in a climactic battle, but instead 2 broken men having an impactful and meaningful conversation, something Marty would have loved to have written in his movie, but couldn't experience due to his lack of insight. 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri follows Mildred Hayes as she puts up 3 billboards questioning the police on the investigation of the rape and murder of her teenage daughter. The narrative follows a cast of characters in a small town exploring how their anger and pain affects others around them and, more importantly, themselves. Mildred is a very sympathetic protagonist. Her anger feels justified and is showcased through satisfying and comedic outbursts.
How about you, sweetheart? You know who threw that can?
No, I didn't really see.
It's until we see what anger can truly do we realize how destructive the emotion becomes. Anger is normalized in Ebbing, Missouri, shown as Charlie and Robbie fix the table together in the living room after what is, for most people, a very horrific case of domestic violence. The costume for Mildred is also worth noting as it makes her look less feminine. The jumpsuit, bandana, and hair tied back makes her look gender neutral, making men relate to her. McDonagh has this to say: "What's great about Mildred is that she stands out of time in our culture because she's not based on ageism. It's not about her trying to be her age or pretending to be, or having to carry the mantle of a female of a certain age. She's just a mother who's lost her child, a parent who's lost her child. It goes across gender. That kind of grief is something we all as humans understand. The film has a message about anger begetting anger. This is said by Charlie, one of the film's antagonists. It's also quoted from a less than intelligent younger girlfriend, diminishing its impact. A more accurate approach to theme is in one of the most profound scenes of the film, when Welby, after realizing it's Dixon under the bandages, says salt will just fuck up your wounds. Anger is not a virus that you catch. It's a feeling that we all have, but all it will do is make our pain worse. Welby then gives Dixon a glass of orange juice, a true act of compassion and kindness, opening a hateful character and town to forgiveness. The narrative of Three Billboards is unique, as scenes never play out as expected. The interrogation scene ends with Willoughby coughing blood, causing it to abruptly end. Willoughby's suicide tips the movie on its head, significantly shifting the tone. The man who threatened Mildred and who comes across as a clear villain, boasting about raping another girl, has a clear alibi and will most likely live his life as a free man. The ending is also one of the most important aspects of the film. Mildred and Dixon, learning about another rape of a young woman, go out to get revenge in an effort to maybe feel better. They have learnt the impact of their anger and are both scarred by the events of the film, literally and figuratively. They are unsure of whether to kill the guilty man, making up their mind as they go on the journey. Learning to be less angry does not instantly make one happy or forgiving. The ending proposes that the journey these two will go on will aid their progression to become happier people. McDonagh purposefully does not use happy endings, at least in his feature films. When looking at his first feature, In Bruges, all of the characters are dead or damaged. McDonagh knows that happy endings are good, with many great films having happy endings, but his characters do not deserve them. Their actions have consequences, and whilst they deserve a chance to redeem themselves, they get what they paid for. Three Billboards does inject some optimism, breaking parody and absent quality from the film, its characters, and its narrative. McDonagh, during travels as a young man through small American towns, stumbled across a woman pulling up billboards calling out the police for a lack of action. It was decades later where he realized that this true event could be applied to a film concept. This true story shows that McDonagh has a creative process that is just like any other writer, but what separates him is that he has a clear understanding for what he likes and does not like about mainstream cinema. It is through this understanding that he is able to create narratives with complex ideas, thus showing how challenging narrative conventions is a way to create a stronger, more entertaining product.
We all got a dream, don't we? Not just fags. Oh, by the way, I don't think they like being called fags anymore.